Hey everybody, welcome back to the Personal Transformation Podcast. My name is Dan Storey, author of Personal Transformation Blueprint, now available on Amazon, so get yourself a copy if you haven't already. In this episode, we're going to be talking about adversity and how do we deal with those challenges when they arise on the journey to success. You know, not everything that happens to us on that path is going to be pleasant. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, the universe is going to test us at various points along the way just to make sure that we are serious about our journey and about making it to the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve. Now, some of those adversities are going to be planned. We can plan for them. We know they're going to come, all right? And we've seen that documented in the emotional cycle of change, so we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Some of them are unplanned. Some of them just pop up in the moment. Happy little surprises. And the question is, how do we deal with those? How do we deal with those in a moment and not allow them to impact our momentum and knock us off track? Okay, so we're going to talk about both sides of those, and I'll give you 3 specific examples from my own life in terms of those unplanned adversity moments that come up and ultimately how we deal with them. Now, how we deal with them is consistent, right? What we need to do is tell ourselves a different story about why these things are coming in. Okay, so we're going to look at reframing. We're going to look at telling different stories, and I'll share like the 2 stories that could go on. And ultimately, if you've heard the parable of the wolves, right? There's 2 wolves that are going on inside of us. Which one wins? The one we feed. This is what we want to be thinking about. We need to be focusing on the story that is most empowering. Whether it's right or wrong, true or false, it doesn't matter. It's the one that empowers us. So we'll explore both sides of the equation in this, okay? So let's jump into planned change. Let's talk about planned change. So the emotional cycle of change model, you've seen that, we talk about it in the book, is ultimately we start off every endeavor full of hope and optimism, right? Things are going to be amazing. This is the new thing. Yay! We have this beginner's luck mentality and everything seems to be going great. We're having a ton of fun. And slowly that starts to drop off, right? Fun becomes work. And we realize that if we want to be successful at anything, we're going to have to put in quite a lot of work until ultimately we end up in this position where we've put so much work in and things don't seem to be moving forwards as well as we thought they would. And we call that the valley of despair. This is planned. This is something that you know is going to come up. Comes up for everybody in every success journey, is that input is outweighed significantly and output is lagging. Okay, so we have to put lots of effort in and later on the results show. But if you don't put that effort in, you never get through the valley of despair. You never persist long enough. And what a lot of people will do is they'll quit at that point of adversity. When it gets hard, they'll say things to themselves like, oh, I guess I'm not as good at this as I thought I was, or you know, maybe I'm just not cut out for this, or something along those lines, and doubt and insecurity kicks in. And we start to wonder if we've got what it takes to get through. Well, actually, you don't have what it takes. Sorry, but you don't. And this is the reality, is that people have to understand that work develops skills. Work develops those understandings of what it takes to get through this valley of despair. You need to put the effort in. You need to ask the questions. You need to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, is what we're doing working? And you need to recommit to your goal. And your goal is to persist through this moment, to develop those nuances, to develop that extra understanding of what it takes to cross that bridge. Then persist long enough. And you've got to persist in the face of doubt. This is hard, right? For most people, it's easy to do things when we're motivated, when we're in a moment when everything feels good. It's so easy to stay doing the things that we need to do. It's difficult to do the things when we don't feel like doing it. And we call that discipline, right? Discipline is showing up, whether you feel like it or not, whether you're motivated or not. You set the plan, you follow the plan. It's okay to revise the plan, understand if it's working, but once that's set in motion, work the plan. And I think Kobe Bryant was saying, you know, he would set his goals at the beginning of the training season. He wouldn't wake up on a day and say, oh, do I feel like training today? He said, no, the decision's already made. I'm not negotiating with myself. I'm going to follow through with this plan. Okay, so emotional cycle of change says we all end up in this planned period of adversity where things feel hard, feel difficult, and every temptation in that moment is to quit and try something different. Don't. Stick at it. Persist. Show up with discipline. Do the work that you know you need to do. Develop those extra understandings and experience that are going to help you cross the chasm. And then after that, you end up in this informed optimism stage again where you know what it takes. Okay, but you can also see the journey. So some adversity is going to be planned. Understand that in every success journey, it's going to have a period of slog where you just need to put in the grind. And actually, that's what we talk about in the Personal Transformation Blueprint. The other adversity is less planned, right? These are things that pop up in life that you weren't expecting, right? And it could be absolutely anything. And all that's going to happen is it's the universe asking you a question and saying, okay, well, are you still committed? Are you still on track? And what are you going to do about it? And in these moments, we have to make a decision, right? And the decision that we make is based upon the story that we tell ourselves about those moments, okay? We have an event happen to us, we interpret that event, and then we do something as a result of our interpretations, not as a result of the event itself, as a result of our interpretations. Let me say that again. An event happens, we interpret it, and then we take actions based off our interpretation, not the event itself. All right, so let's unpack that a little bit more. Things happen. Whatever happens to us doesn't matter. The same thing can happen to two different people. They can tell themselves different stories about something, and each of them could go on and take different actions based on the same event, purely based on their different interpretations. So let's talk about these specific examples that I said I was going to share from my journey. So let's talk about three. I'm going to talk about, first one is something that happened a couple of days ago, which is an injury, right? I've got an injury in my knee, and for those of you who know, I'm a bodybuilder, and I'm just entering the cardio phase, so I kind of need to walk. And so having a knee injury is difficult at this point. So we're going to talk about injuries and what that means. We're going to talk about losing a parent at a particularly tight time in competition, and when everything is focused on a goal for something to happen like this. So what do you do when you lose your parent? Like, that's crazy, right? And that happened to me last year. And then the third one is leaving my job. Kind of voluntary, kind of not. We'll talk about that. I'll give you a little bit more context into that, because many people will find themselves being made redundant or fired or whatever it is, and that changing their interpretation of themselves. So we'll talk about those three. So let's talk a bit about injury. Injury, I did something silly. I was playing football with friends the other day, and let's just say, long story short, two of us went into a kick. We both kicked the ball at the same time, and my knee came off a little bit, not so happy. Okay, so currently walking around with a brace on and limping. I said I look like halfway between a gangster and a one-legged pirate. So imagine that. That's kind of how I'm looking at the moment. All right, so I'm walking a little bit crazy. Now, the question is, what does that injury tell me about myself? The injury has happened. Okay, the event has happened. The question now is, how do I interpret that? Now, in the past, I might have let injuries knock me off track a little bit. In fact, I would have. I remember training for an event years ago. I got a foot injury. I couldn't do the event. It's devastating. Like, it's absolutely devastating. It actually knocked my confidence quite a lot, to the point where it took me a long time to recover from this and actually get back into doing those things. Yes, the injury was still an issue, but it was less the injury itself and more my interpretation of the injury. So injuries are going to happen. If you're an athlete, if you're a sports person, however seriously you take it, injuries are going to happen. And at that point, you got to ask yourself a question. And that is, what does this mean? Well, I can either see it as a sign, I guess. Oh, this is the universe testing. You probably shouldn't do it. You know, you're too old. All of those things, doubt and insecurity can come in. Or I could see it as a, okay, well, let's see how creative you are. Let's see how committed you are. And this is actually a test, right? Same event, two different interpretations. Which one do I choose? Well, the one that's most empowering. Okay, so yes, am I injured? How do I see this? Well, I think some of the work I've been doing lately on mental toughness, there's actually people with higher mental toughness overcome injuries or recover from injuries quicker. Why? Oh, they see it as part of the challenge. They see it as part of the journey to success. So now, as well as training in the gym and having to do all my diet and the cardio and all those kind of things, I now see injury as adding into that. And other people haven't had to overcome injury. So I'm going to do this on top of all the other work, and I'm still going to persist. Okay, so historically, I would have let injury cut me out. I think one of the stories that helped me out most with this was last year I learned that Chris Bumstead, who won, I think it was his fifth Olympia title, tore his bicep 6 weeks out from the competition. I was like, what? Tore a bicep 6 weeks out from being the championship for the world's best bodybuilder, and he still won? Like, how is that even possible? Injury doesn't have to completely knock you off track. You've done all of the work. Just persist. Keep doing it. Train around it. Think of creative ways that you can still meet your goals without necessarily targeting that area directly. So it's a test of creativity. There we go. So there's a nice reframe on injury. Does it still hurt? Yes. Can't get over that. Am I still going to work? Yes, still am. Okay, so that's injury. Don't let injury derail you. Next one is I lost my stepfather last year. He died in April, shortly after his birthday, and I was coming up to a competition. I think I was about 3-4 weeks out. It wasn't long after that I would end up on stage. And the question is, do you change your goal? Because everything is, oh, it's okay, Dan. People would understand if you decided not to do the show and not to compete and focus on family. That would make sense, right? And if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, yeah, that would make sense. I didn't do that. I could have told myself that story, but instead I told myself a different story. And the story that I told myself was my stepdad was part of the journey. He was there. He was cheering us on all the way through to the end. I say us, me and my brother, and it's a family effort to do something like this. He was cheering us on. And actually, I would have seen it as a disservice to his support to not do the competition than I would have given him more support by taking myself off the stage. So this might sound crazy, but we had the crematorium or the funeral and everything, and I had my Tupperware. I still had my meal prep ready, and I saw that as an honor to him rather than saying I'm more selfish. I could be right, could be wrong. It doesn't matter. It's the more empowering view. Okay. And I'd like to think that actually during that competition, and I did think about this backstage, and yes, there was a moment where I had a little tear in my eye, is that I learned a lot from watching him die. And one of those things was to live the life that you're supposed to live and don't see excuses. So super impactful moment on my life, but I think I chose the empowering solution as a result of that, not the one that was going to take the pressure off me. Could have taken the pressure off, absolutely, but keep the pressure on. That's what makes timeless. The last one we'll talk about then quickly is at the beginning of this year, I left my job. I haven't talked about this huge amount. I had a lot of adversity and challenge within the job from an interpersonal perspective and a philosophical perspective, and I had a conversation with the company. We decided it would be mutually beneficial to part ways, so I left. And I think after that, there's a gap. If you've worked for however many years you've worked for, then anytime you stop working, there's going to be a gap. And in that gap, your head goes a little bit crazy and starts asking all sorts of questions. And again, it's that moment. It's, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? You're searching for meaning. Your brain is always doing that, searching for meaning. And it's going to give you loads of options to say, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I think one of the challenges was, and I've had to do this in the past, is make people redundant, people lose jobs, is people can take that very personally. They can take it as a sign of weakness or lack or insecurity or anything along those lines. I wasn't good enough. But actually, was there challenges? Was there things that weren't working? Yeah, but that's not me. There probably is stuff that I've learned, definitely, but it's not me. I'm going to part that. The question is the event happened. I do not have a job. The question is, okay, what does that mean? And the way I see to look at this is finding my opportunity to do things like this, the podcast. I've been talking about this for years, trying to write books for years on this topic. I never had the space, never given myself the space. And now actually this is the universe saying, hey, here's the space. Because of my negotiation skills, having a little bit of cash to spend on this and not feel pressured from a money perspective and making smart decisions earlier has facilitated that. But this is now my space, and it's my opportunity to find out what I'm really capable of. Okay, so people, if you lose your job, please understand this is not you. This is not you. Companies very rarely take individual people into consideration when they're making these cutbacks. And this is happening globally, right? 20% of all tech firms have gone last year. They cut their entire workforce by 20%. Not because you did something bad, but because the economy, the climate, and they just decided that they overscaled in the past. Don't take this personally. The question is, what can you do about it? And the question is, the answer is, you can see this as an opportunity to be fortunate to have left the place that wasn't right for you, and to have an opportunity to be creative and intentional about the next stage of whatever it is you're going to do. It's daunting, especially if you haven't got that consistency to sit on, but it's an opportunity, and it's your chance to see what you're truly capable of. And re-ask that question, like, what juices you, what excites you, what makes you passionate about everything that you go on in life, and tell that story, reinforce it. Now, if you read the book, Personal Transformation Blueprint, you'll understand that there's your current identity and there's a future identity and there's a gap. Everything I say here, I'm not necessarily going to believe all of these things. So I have to repeat it. I have to reinforce it in my head all of the time until I believe it. Okay, so these stories are not things I just make up on the moment and say, okay, well, that something feels good, I'm going to go with that. I have to convince myself. We all have insecurities. We all have imposter syndrome from times that hold us back. just be aware that these reframes, even though they sound slick and maybe like I've practiced them a little bit, I have practiced them because I have to keep telling myself this same story for when doubt and insecurity kicks in. Okay, so let's go back to the topic. Dealing with adversity. Adversity is going to come up. It's going to happen planned, and there are going to be unplanned moments of adversity. The same thing is true in each moment. An event happens, our interpretation then takes place, and then we act based on our interpretation, not the event. Your job when adversity comes up is to interpret the event in a way that is empowering. Like I said, we have two wolves inside of us. Which one succeeds? The one we feed. So choose the story about the event that is most empowering for you. And if you can't come up with an empowering story, imagine you're telling the story to someone else and what you would say to them. We often give better advice to others than we give to ourselves. So consider it for somebody else, or ask somebody else to give you their insight. It's often helpful to lean on others in times like that as well, especially around adversity. So I hope this has been useful. I hope my personal share of some of the situations has helped, right? Because many of us will go through those moments where we feel that everything is against us. We just need to find a positive thread, a way of seeing things that are more empowering, and then hold on to that belief. Persist, show up with discipline, do the things that we don't want to do, whether the universe is testing us or not. Keep going, persist, because on the other side of that adversity is greatness. I'll see you on the next episode.